This Daredevil episode exposes what most people don't understand about the American justice system. Plus, it contains several gut-wrenching moral dilemmas, so let's analyze. Daredevil's relationship with Father Lantom is fascinating to follow through the series. The deep conversations they have are a gold mine, but this episode reveals why their uneasy friendship is eating away at the old priest. He says if Daredevil confesses to killing someone, Father can't tell anyone if it's confessed during the sacrament of confession. So I'm going to bring in a couple people for their reaction. Doug and Drew. Just a little fact-checking so far. First, at this point in the series, has Daredevil killed anyone yet? What do you think?
No.
I don't think he's actually killed anybody. He's been pretty
from
close.
the way he talks, I don't think he really wants to. I don't think he ever has. He's been there when people have died, or he's been maybe not the main reason, but something else happened and person died. But he's not just going out and murdering people.
I could see him being on a little bit of a crash course, though, because when he's trying to interrogate people, he will injure them in ways that, maybe if they didn't get help, they might die, they might bleed out or get infected or something.
Mm-hmm.
But
I think he knows that once he gets what he needs, he's going to get them the help they need.
Yeah. Okay.
So, it's always in the back. He might be careless about it. I will say that. He might think in the back of his mind, it's fine that I'm digging my thumb into this guy's chest where the bullet just went in. It's fine. I'm going to get him somewhere safe. But then he tries to get him somewhere safe and something else happens.
Or what if he died?
That's kind of later on in the movie, series. But I think that's probably happened to him in the past as well. Again, we're kind of at the beginning. I mean, he's
new at this.
Had these powers for a while, and he's kind of decided he wants to do this. But he's still trying to figure out, what's the best way to try to get any info out of people. Do I torture him, or maybe I just try and scare him, or maybe I can, relate to their good sense of nature if they have any left inside of them, or something like that. So it's trial and error. It's just like, Elon Musk trying to get to Mars. I mean, he's crashed multiple rockets, and he's just like, well, every once in a while, a rocket will crash. That's fine. We learn from it and we move on. So I think, that's what he might be thinking in the back of his head. It's just like, I screwed up and that person died. That person wasn't that good anyhow. And I didn't do it. I kind of contributed to getting him to that place, but I didn't do it. So, I think I'm all right.
Yeah, this came out in 2015, and they're very much tapping into a conversation that Americans were having 5-10 years before that, which was, is it moral to torture prisoners who are terrorists to try to prevent terrorist attacks? I mean, that was going on after 9/11. Mm-hmm. So it was pretty relevant when this episode came out. What about Father Lantom? Let's do kind of a fact check here. Are Catholic priests required to report murder confessions? Because there is such a thing as a mandated reporter.
Well, priests are mandated reporters outside of confession. So yes, they do report when they're required to.
Yeah, but not when you're in the box.
If it's confessed to you, they have no duty to report that information heard. So,
and I actually found out that the law is different from state to state. But I looked up New York because that's where this movie's taking place, and yeah, they are protected.
Well, it's very similar when you go to a psychiatrist, or and you're talking about certain things that are bothering you, and maybe you did commit a crime. There's that confidentiality that I can't go to the police and tell them what you did because you're telling me this in confidentiality here. However, if that person is a danger or makes a threat to the psychologist, then they have to report that. Mm-hmm. But even then, they could confess to a killing, and that I can't go to the police because I will lose my license because I'm breaking that patient trust. So it's kind of the same deal.
Yeah, and that's got to be rough because anybody could come in and it's just like, Father, I have a problem and I need help with it. Can I please pray for forgiveness? And you tell me what you've done. Well, I'm a
serial killer.
Well, I was going to go even worse than that with kids.
Yeah.
But I don't know if I say the word, will we get docked or whatever. So I didn't say it, but adult and kids, you get where I'm going.
Yes.
So somebody confesses to that and it's like, I need to pray for forgiveness. And it's like, well, then he's not asking for help. So it sounds like he just wants to wipe the slate clean and he wants to do this again. That's got to be rough.
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
Or like you said, you know, I've killed people in the past. And it's
I'm assuming
Yeah,
the
go ahead.
thought process is that it's supposed to be like they're talking to God, like the priest isn't even there. Because the priest is just a
That makes
mediator,
sense, yeah.
from my
Mhm.
understanding. But yes, that would... Ooh, that does create some moral conundrums, and that would weigh heavily on a priest. That would be very hard.
There's it's one of my favorite movies, top 6 of all time. Oh, dang it. What's the name of the movie? I blinked out. John
It's my
Cusack
favorite
is a
movie.
hitman. No, Grosse Point Blank. There it is. That movie, he does go to a psychiatrist. He's a hitman, hired for money, but he goes to a psychologist, and his psychologist hates it when he calls because, you know, it's like he talks about all this stuff that he does, and it's like, oh God. And I can't even report it. It's like, you know, so there's a comical bit in that movie that's kind of fun. But yeah, if you think about it seriously, all the stuff that they hear, all the, you know, and most of it is, you know, just people day by day stuff and everything like that. But what are you supposed to do? How are you supposed to handle that? Because technically you're not even supposed to know who's in there. But I think the priest knows, truthfully. I mean, just from the few conversations he's had with Matt Murdock, I think he realizes, all right, he's probably the guy in the mask. There's something weird going on here. I mean, keep in mind, they just lived through the first Avengers movie. They just saw a hole open up in the sky, a bunch of aliens come down, and some dude flying around with a hammer, another one in a red suit. There's this big green thing running through, just crashing everything, you know, so now the priest is like, well, this blind guy is saying these weird things that makes me believe that he's this masked man vigilante. Well, that doesn't surprise me at all that a blind man can do that, because I just saw a scrawny dude turn into a 7-8 foot green monster. So a blind guy who can do martial arts, that's not much of a stretch. I mean, you know, they made that movie back in the 80s with Blind Fury, so not that much of a surprise to him, I think.
Later in the episode, we're introduced to Ben Urich, a reporter who investigated organized crime. And he did it because he's a true everyday hero and just wanted to make his city a better place. But his boss says these corporate corruption and crime stories that he writes don't sell papers. Foggy and Matt are faced with a similar financial and moral conundrum. They want to defend the innocent, but they feel pressure to take cases for people who are actually guilty just to keep the lights on. So there's a common theme weaved throughout this episode. Doing good keeps you poor, but getting your hands dirty gets you paid. Guys, I want to get your reaction to this. This is kind of a spiritual, moral theme here. Do you guys feel like this is actually true? And why is this theme introduced in the episode?
Well, I think it's interesting when they take the case of, you know, the guy who is guilty. He comes in. He's guilty because at the very beginning of the episode, he walked into a bowling alley. And as he says, he just wanted to roll some balls.
Like everyone says.
Yeah, because that's bowling lingo. And he ends up killing a guy by smashing the ball through the guy's head. And he basically admits to it that, yeah, I did that. And you guys need to defend me. And they take the case, but I think there's a deeper reason why he's taking a case of somebody who's guilty. He wants to find out who does the guy work for, because the guy he works for is probably the one who's setting up all the crime in the city. So I might have to do a little dirty deeds here, but the overall end game could be a positive thing. So I think that's how he's justifying defending a criminal.
Well, what I love about that conundrum too is that Matt has a good reason for wanting to defend this guy, because he thinks he'll get answers that lead to who this mysterious crime boss is, Wilson Fisk, right? But he can't tell Foggy, his partner, why he's taking the case. So to Foggy, it looks like Matt's becoming dirty, right? And
yeah, you're just in it for the money at this point.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I think they talk about that a little bit, and I think Matt covers himself pretty well, where it's like, look, I'm with you 100%. But if we're going to make a living off of this, I'm not saying get rich, but enough to pay the rent, give us some food money, stuff like that. Every once in a while, we're going to have to take a case that seems like we're on the wrong side. But in the name of justice, everyone deserves a lawyer. Everyone deserves a chance to prove themselves innocent. So,
well, yeah, I guess that is part of our legal system too. I mean, you could argue everybody is supposed to have a right to an attorney here.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So,
and
I mean,
I don't know the laws with attorneys, because, I mean, he kind of walks in and he's like, I want you guys to represent me. I think I don't know. Do they have to?
You don't have to take the case.
Okay. That I didn't know about.
If they look at it as a no-win situation and they know that, no, you're guilty and you probably should be in prison, they don't have to take the case. They can turn it down.
Gotcha.
That's why Foggy was like, we don't want this. This is not the kind of stuff that we do.
Foggy wanted to take that case, but he saw that check from Wesley that says, if you take this check, I mean, we never figured out how much money he was offered, but Foggy wanted to take it until he got in the room and started talking to the guy. And he was just like, this isn't right. But I like watching the characters wrestle with morality because you see them wanting to be good and struggling their way there. But I think that's more realistic. Like, I like to see my heroes come out on top, but it's hard to be good, you know?
It's hard to be good because there's so much temptation that it's easy to give into.
And we're human, right?
Yeah. And sometimes doing stuff that's maybe a little wrong or whatever is sometimes kind of fun. Because there's that risk, there's that excitement, there's that like, oh, I shouldn't be doing this when I'm going to, So yeah, I think walking the line and always doing the right thing, sometimes it can be hard. Sometimes it's just so much easier. It's just easier to do. Sometimes do the wrong thing.
Yeah, to go streaking downtown.
Right. It just sounds like a lot of fun, right? So
that does not sound like fun to me.
No, it does not.
At the end of the case, Matt gives a cryptic speech. He says, some see morality as a sharp line, others a blur. The show makes us wrestle with the idea that even if we know someone is guilty in our hearts, you can only lock someone away if the facts definitively prove it. And there's no way to prove or deny that this guy didn't kill in self-defense, even though his interrogation was very suspicious. So guys, reaction time. How realistic was this case? What did you think of Matt's speech?
I thought it was really good. Personally, I don't know. Have either of you ever served on a jury?
I was interviewed to be on a jury for a murder case once, but I was not selected.
I haven't. My mother has. She was on a murder case, and she said it was one of the hardest things that she's ever gone through.
Yeah, I can imagine. I've never been on one personally myself, but I have strong feelings about what I believe in, what I think is right, what I think is wrong, and I try to best I can live by those. But yeah, when you're put in front of a situation where you have to block all that out. I don't know how hard that would be if I was put in that situation where it's just like, this, whatever the case is, it's like you look at somebody and it's like, well, yeah, I can imagine that happening with that. And you hear all the details from one side, but then you get the defense and it's like, but what proves that my client did it? And I think that's where they kind of got to. And that's why he gave that speech. It's like, you've heard about this guy, he literally crushed a guy's head with a bowling ball after beating up on him for a while,
Who does that?
And yeah, it's just like that alone. It's like, oh, that's murder. But truthfully, if you look at all the facts and everything like that, even though no matter how you feel about somebody and how you feel about, you might feel sorry for, this was a bad guy who was killed by a bad guy. But in real life, there might be a 12-year-old kid who was hurt or even worse because of a situation that they think this person started or did. And when you hear the details of what the kid went through and everything like that, it's like, well, that kid deserves something. That guy looks guilty. He sounds guilty, but you just have to pull all of that out of your mind. It's like, it doesn't matter what I feel. It matters what is put in front of me. So it's got to be hard. I wouldn't even.
Yeah. And to turn in a conviction, you've got to have no doubt. You have to be 100% convinced one way or the other. If there's any doubt, you cannot toss in a guilty verdict. So that's where my mom struggled because she was listening to the facts of this. And it was a young kid. It was I would say a kid. He was a teenager. And she's looking at this kid like a guilty verdict. His life is done. So they're trying to, same thing. Was it self-defense or was it, accidental or whatever? She struggled with it. Like she was on this thing for a week and yeah, it was horrible. I couldn't imagine doing it.
I think the system, people don't understand that that's how it works, right? You can't go in there and say, well, I know they did it. Like the facts have to point to it. And I don't know that a lot of people are used to thinking that way these days. Because if you watch the headlines, guilt is often assumed. But I think deep down we want it this way because you're trying to keep innocent people from getting locked away, right? But the problem with this is you're always going to have some people who are innocent, they get convicted, and you're always going to have some killers go free. So I love that the show brought this up and that Matt, who is a hero and he has faith, he's Catholic, even he seems to recognize the difficulties here. And when he's talking about some people see the lines as blurred, I feel like that's an allusion to like what he's having to do now. Like take on this case of someone he knows is guilty to get information and then go beat him up after this case is
to
over.
Get information.
Yeah. But the spiritual theme in the show, I think, is amazing. It's that humans cannot get the justice system perfect. It's impossible. So when he says something, he alludes to the idea that there's a higher form of justice, or there's going to be justice outside of this courtroom. And you could take that as he's saying, I'm going to go put my Daredevil suit on and I'm going to beat the snot out of him. Or you could take it as God will ultimately punish him. And I think he probably means both. It's probably got a dual meaning there. But, you know, that's for something for people to wrestle with is like, we can do the best we can, and that's all we can do. And this episode like captures that piece of the justice system to me in the challenge that we can't get it right. We can only get as close as we can get.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with that.
All I can think of to say is the exact same thing I said last time. Is that I wouldn't wish jury duty on anyone, especially when it comes to the heavier things.
Yeah.
You know, again, just dealing with justice versus what's in your mind, or in Matt's case, justice versus vengeance. He's on a trail of vengeance to get to Fisk or Kingpin. But at the same point, he is the leading man of justice as a lawyer. So it's like, how do you find that perfect line in the middle? And I think, and that's basically what he struggles with, I think, throughout the entire season. Makes for interesting thinking points on that. At the end of the episode, Matt catches up with John Healy as Daredevil to confront him to get Fisk's name. And after a little bit, he's able to, which makes Healy so scared of what Fisk is going to do to them that he ends up taking his own life. So it makes you think, how scared does somebody have to be of somebody to end their own life? We've lived, Nathan, 30 plus years, Drew and I 40 plus years, and we've been in scary situations. We've been in bad situations. We've been happy. We've been sad. Has there ever, and I'm going to go ahead and say no, but has there ever been a point where you're just you've gotten to that point where it's just like, I have nowhere else to go but there?
Oh, no. I mean, I could find an island somewhere to hide on.
Yeah,
right?
I've never been that terrified of somebody where I've even considered it. So that just tells you, and that's setting it up, of what a bad dude Fisk really is. You know, that, yeah, if you're that scared of what he's going to do to you, that you are just willing to look at a sharp piece of shrapnel and then run your eye through it, Fisk is a bad dude. So
yeah, and that is a great way. Now, I would say probably over half the people that watch this show have read the comics or seen cartoons. They know what kind of person Fisk is. But to those who don't know Kingpin, all they know is the name Wilson Fisk. They understand he's a bad guy, but I don't think they understand how bad of a guy he is. And ending this episode the way they did with him taking his own life because he's so scared that he just said a name, that sets up the rest of the series.
Yeah.
Or the rest of the season, because you know this is the baddest of the bad.
Isn't it weird that the guy that he was working for, his nickname is Kingpin, and the episode starts in a bowling alley?
Oh, yeah. I never thought of that.
Point. Yeah, he should have made some kind of reference.
Right? I mean, that's some foreshadowing there.
Right before the guy throws the ball, he comes down with a sword, cuts off his hand. The ball goes rolling down with his hand still in the ball.
Well, not that Kingpin. Come on.
Well, guys, watch Daredevil episode 4, and we will be back to talk about it soon.